Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Ending Physician Overwhelm. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I was just thinking that I say hello, friends, and oddly, I do have a lot of friends who listen to this podcast. In particular, I just want to say a big shout out to members of the EntreMD Business School, many of whom are listening right now, and many of whom have become good friends of mine. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I participate in a coaching group for physicians in business. It's primarily geared towards women physicians who have businesses of all kinds. And we just got together for our most recent retreat, which happens about twice a year. And it was just an amazing opportunity to come together with a group of like-minded physicians who are really trying to change the narrative of what it looks like to be a physician in business. Some of them have their own clinics, some of them have coaching practices, some of them have products or are speakers, but it's just an amazing group of humans. So to all of my EBS brothers and sisters, just mwah, I love you so much. Thank you so much for listening. All right, let's get into it. So today we are talking about the idea of control versus freedom. And apologies, I was reading something of this idea of you can have control or you can have freedom, but you can't have both. And my apology is that I can't remember where I read it or heard it, and so I can't attribute, but I'm just going to say I didn't come up with it. And I thought it was just such a brilliant idea and framework for thinking about what do we want for our lives. And I think if you're like me, and if you're listening, you probably are at least a little bit like me. You probably err a little too far on the side of the control end of the spectrum, right? Really just feeling that control is necessary. And maybe if I can control the situation, if I can control the circumstances, if I control other people, including maybe my children, my patients, right, my staff, if I can control things, then I can protect myself from some imagined harm or a real harm, right? That happens too. But I really wanted to dive in and talk about this today because I think it's just a really interesting way to think about it, of control versus freedom and how those two things are opposed to each other. And I was thinking of a few synonyms, that we could use instead of control and freedom. So we could think of rigid or structured versus flexible and a little bit more free form. We could think of something as being tight versus something being relaxed. And as I am saying these words, like I can feel tightness in my body when I think about control. I immediately sort of have this tightness in my neck. I am grabbing my hands, right, and clenching them into fists, versus this idea of a more flexible looseness, right, this freedom idea. And I don't think that it's good for us to think solely in terms of medical work when we're thinking about this, although I think we should think about that as well. But really just thinking in our lives, are we living from a place where we're really trying to wrestle control over things, including other people? Or do we feel more expansive and free? Do we feel that we trust ourselves to handle what comes? There's a great quote from Dr. Becky Kennedy, who I've mentioned on the podcast before. She is a clinical psychologist and works primarily with parents and families. And she says that anxiety is uncertainty coupled with a lack of trust in your ability to cope with something. I'm going to say that again. Anxiety is uncertainty uncertainty coupled with a lack of trust in your ability to cope with something, right? We will all face uncertainty. Nobody saw the pandemic coming from, obviously before it started to rear its ugly head, right? We never could have predicted what it would feel like to live through a pandemic in this day and age, right? There was so much uncertainty about it, even if statistical modeling sort of predicts, right, that it's going to pop up every so often. Many of us living through that did not imagine that we could have so much uncertainty as the pandemic unfolded, right? It's a good example that uncertainty is inevitable. What we experienced, right, is that we had a lot of assumptions that things were certain, right? It was certain that our kids would go to school. It was certain that we would work in our workplaces, right, rather than from home. We were tricked by just the normal rhythm of certainty, feeling that, of course, those things are going to happen and continue. But really, anything could happen at any time. And, if we sort of come to this place of, okay, where do we fall in the control versus freedom thing as we think, gosh, anything could happen at any time. I want to be flexible, but not totally loose. I want to be thoughtful and with reasonable preparations and protections in place, but not so rigid and structured that I don't live my life. And I think a lot of us want that. And I think, again, a lot of us who are here fall more into that control, tight, rigid, overly structured kind of mentality, if you will. And we would like more freedom, more flexibility, more looseness, but we often don't really know how to get there. And it may feel like, okay, we can pick one or the other, but not both. I want you to see them as a spectrum, right? We've got control on one end, we've got freedom or flexibility on the other. We probably want to be somewhere in the middle, really. We want to be able to relax. We want to be able to pivot and be flexible. But we don't want to be so loose and so relaxed that there is no structure, right? And nothing ever gets done and no one can trust us. Now, I would argue that outside of really extreme depression or burnout, none of us is going to become catatonic in that way. We are not going to not have structure, not be dependable, reliable. We are not going to flip from one side to the other, although that is a very common fear that we have. If I let go of this tightness, of this rigidity, then I'm just going to be a lazy mess of a human being. It doesn't work that way. Wouldn't it be nice, though, to let your shoulders down a little bit? Wouldn't it be nice to feel more freedom and looseness in your body and in the way that you think, so that on a difficult day, when something unexpected happens, you're able to navigate it and pivot without just getting stuck in this thought of this shouldn't have happened, right? Which is what happens when we have an overdependence on control, right? We might go into a day thinking, this is a difficult day. I've got to keep my stuff together, right? I really have to stay on task, right? Something unexpected happens, power goes out, we've got a sick child. If we stay in that rigidity, it is so much harder to actually navigate the day and get done what needs to get done and to feel good than if we can take a breath, take a pause, right? Invite some looseness, some freedom, some flexibility into our bodies, and then come to the situation at hand. So let's think about this and how it shows up in your life. It's very easy for us to get into that pattern of thinking that if we don't think we over prepare. If I prepare for my day, right? If I have all my charts prepped, if my inbox is empty, right? That magical inbox zero feeling that we all love. If I have all my ducks lined up in a row, just so we have the rest of our thought, something along the lines of maybe it won't hurt so bad. Maybe my day will go better. Maybe I won't feel so terrible at the end of the day. it reinforces this feeling in our bodies that we need to have very tight control over everything. And what I want to point out here is that none of us has that kind of control, really, even when we feel like we might, right? We might feel that we can control our kids, control our staff, control our spouse, control our patients, right? If only we're very tight and rigid and we have clear policies and we reinforce them and we have tight boundaries, right? We think we can control, but really we don't. We don't control other people's thoughts and feelings. We don't control how they show up, what actions they take or don't take, how they feel. We don't control any of that, and that is not a lack of some critical action on your part. That's just the way it is. And I would argue, if you really step back and think about it, if you think about all that work you put into prepping everything and making sure the inbox was completely clean every single second, and imagining that you can control these other people, you are spending so much energy to do that, that even if you keep all your ducks in a row, you are going to be so exhausted and spent and probably numb by the end of the day. And I bet we could all tell stories about times that that's happened to us. I remember doing this myself, and I remember watching some of my family medicine residents do this, where they were not yet on shift for labor and delivery, but they would be checking the board to see how many patients were in labor, right? They would be looking at triage. They would be planning to take over the inpatient service the next day, and what's the census like, and what are the patients like, right? There's kind of this pre-traumatic stress disorder, this anxiety that happens before we're even on the line. And again, it's this internal drive to try and control. It's this tightness. It's this thinking, gosh, if I only know exactly how my day is going to go, right, then I can guard myself against some kind of pain or fear or hurt. It just doesn't work that way, my friends. We have to, again, I'm just physically doing this, right? We have to let our shoulders down a little bit. I think we need to come into acceptance of what we do have control over and what we don't. What we do have control over is how we come into situations, how we show up, how we choose to speak or act. And when we are taking good care of ourselves and focusing our energy on taking care of ourselves rather than trying to wrestle control from people that we can't really have, we will feel better and we will be more flexible in navigating uncertainty, navigating new challenges, than if we put our energy into controlling situations far in advance of where they've happened. How does your day go when you are trying to really tightly control all of the little blocks in your day? Right? When you've got a very busy schedule, how are you feeling in your body? Are you energized or are you tight? Are you anxious? Are you excited? There's no right answer here, but I just want to show us that if we are the type of person who looks at a busy day, whether it's a clinical day or not, and we come into it with this tight rigidity and this feeling like, I gotta get this right. I've got to win this day, this crazy day. That really tends to create more negativity than it prevents. I'll share a recent example, actually. I mentioned that I was just away at this retreat, and the day before I left was just a really busy day. I had a meeting that started from 7, and she told me to block out 2 hours, and we went over. I was very surprised by that, but that's the fun of going over a legal contract with a lawyer who's so exquisitely detailed. Actually, it was amazing. But then I rolled into another meeting, and then I checked my inbox, and of course, right, there's multiple messages from my staff. So and so, is trying to get seen urgently today. Problem XYZ has happened. Where can you fit them in? And I had to take a breath and say, oh, nope, can't do that today. So I was in clinic for the afternoon, and then it was curriculum night for my middle schooler. And then pretty soon after that, it was time to leave for the airport. Somewhere in there, I managed to get some dinner, and I did take breaks to eat and everything. But it was just a very tightly scheduled day. And in the past, I would have navigated such a day with a lot of tenseness and anxiety, especially when things kind of dribbled, too close to the timing for the next thing. But I've done enough work here to be able to remind my body to relax and to be able to mentally say, I know that everything that needs to happen is going to get done. There's probably going to be some things that are less important that aren't going to get done. There was a few notes that I didn't finish, for example. There were a few things that were not critical that didn't get packed before I went to the airport to fly out on a red eye. By the way, I've made a decision. I don't think I'm going to do the red eye as much as possible. Oh, I was a little bit disappointed with myself when I picked that, but I remember the prices were weird. Anyway, I digress. Everything that needed to happen, happened. And I chose to set boundaries because I needed to in order to make sure that I got to the really important parts of my day, right? I needed to show up for my middle schoolers' curriculum night so I could find out what was going on, right? That was important to me. I obviously needed to see my patients, and I did offer to add somebody, but ultimately it didn't work out. She went someplace else. Everything was fine. But I needed to do it very much within my own boundaries. What was going to work for me? I couldn't add her to the end of the day, right? I could only put her into a certain place. The flexibility that I navigated that really busy day with was startling to me. Not startling, because it's definitely happened before because I've been doing this for a number of years now. But I just look back at how I would have navigated that even, 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's far different. And so I can look back at these kinds of experiences and see how we can shift the way that we, or maybe the position that we are on that control versus freedom spectrum, that tightness, that rigidity versus flexible and relaxed. I even laughed about it with some of my patients. I said, yep, I've got a busy day today. Of course, lots of things are going on, and I'm so happy to see you. Let's talk. I'm flying out later tonight. My patients were so kind and supportive, and I think, just able to be a real human with them. And again, that's also something that I really value, and it feels like a freedom. It feels like a flexibility. And it's because I've chosen to be taking care of myself in such a way that I prioritize my health. I prioritize my well-being. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But that's kind of the magic of letting go of the control spectrum a little bit and choosing to actively cultivate more relaxation and flexibility. So think about for yourself, again, how does your day go on a day that's very busy, very tightly scheduled? How do you feel? How do you feel in your brain? How do you feel in your body? And is it working for you? Or do you feel like you need to also let your shoulders down, that you need to take some breaths? You can have full control or full freedom, but not both, right? We need to think about where we are on that continuum and decide for ourselves, what is it that we actually want, right? And again, I don't think of it as a all or nothing sort of scenario. I think about it of, if I'm feeling very tight, rigid, controlling, then I probably want to start shifting towards, how do I let my shoulders down? How do I be more relaxed and flexible Not so that I'm fully unstructured, not so that I'm, not reliable or dependable, but so that I can navigate uncertainty or, changes of schedule or surprise events, because they will happen. I think a lot of us as physicians are not very good at spontaneity, right? We are good at responding in emergencies, right? We sometimes over-respond to anything that someone implies is urgent, even if it's not a life-threatening emergency, right? But spontaneity, right, where we're just kind of freewheeling and go with the flow, I think a lot of us aren't like that. At least a lot of us here. But I think a lot of us want more of that. And I would argue that we need to spend time practicing relaxing, practicing being more flexible, practicing letting go of that desire for control, and really understanding that no matter how much we want it, no matter how much we try, we really don't have that much control over the day. And I'm not speaking about physician autonomy here. I'm just saying you never know what's rolling in the door. You never know how the rest of the day is going to go. Allowing for that uncertainty and, again, letting your shoulders down is a skill that we can cultivate. And I would argue, I think more of us need to do that. Do I mean that we're going to get lazy and sloppy in our medical care? No, I don't. Again, I think I mentioned this in a few episodes ago, like we're not going to go take a coffee break in the middle of a code. We're not going to do it, right? What's a coffee break, you ask? I get you. But we need to start taking better care of ourselves on purpose because we want to feel better. And that's really what I want to sell you on today, is that if you want better days, it's not about trying to get control, right, with tightness and rigidity of your schedule. It's about choosing to put yourself on your priority list, up at the top instead of down at the bottom, right? Choosing to get the rest you need, moving your body, taking good care of yourself, right? Getting nutrition, getting sunlight, getting time with friends and family and people that you love, having some fun for a change. We need all of those things in order to feel like well-balanced, happy, healthy humans. And when we choose to do that, we gain freedom, we gain flexibility, we gain the ability to navigate that uncertainty and to deal with our frustrations and to show up in emergencies and to be the leaders we want to be. I hope that helps. I hope that you're imagining this spectrum of control on one side and freedom on the other, sort of seeing where you're at and deciding, is this the right place? Is this how I want to be? Does this feel good? And if it doesn't feel good, then figuring out, how do I want to nudge myself in the other direction towards more of what I want? And on that note, I do want to share something that I am so excited to be announcing, which is that I am launching a new group program for women physicians, which will start December 1st, 2024. So if you're listening to this in real time as the episode comes out, there is plenty of time to get signed up, but there are some early bonuses if you sign up early, so please don't wait. This group program is exclusively for women physicians, and it's really built around trying to bring some of these principles that we talk about on our podcast. My podcast, it's not our podcast, it's my podcast. You're here with me. I'm trying to bring these principles into practice for you in real tangible ways. So in this group, we will meet weekly. We will talk through some of these same ideas. We're going to talk about boundaries. We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about how do I put these important things in my life. We're going to talk about how broken the healthcare system is and that we're not going to wait for it to be fixed before we feel better. And we're not going to be stuck believing that either I suck it up and deal with this, or I have to leave medicine. I'm so tired of that. Leave medicine if you want to. If you want to go and open a bakery or pursue some other passion, absolutely 100% do it. If you want to stay home with your kids because that's what's really calling you, do it. But do it for the right reason. Do it because it's calling you, not because you are letting yourself be pushed out of medicine. I don't say that to imply any weakness. I just think too many women physicians are feeling like their only choice is either I suck it up and keep dealing with it, or I have to leave. And that's so heartbreaking. I am ready to disrupt that narrative, but we need to work together in order to be successful, because each of us doing it on our own in silos against big healthcare telling us what we can and can't do, it's not working. Ooh, that got a little feisty pretty fast. Long story short, join me. If you've been thinking about coaching with me, if you are a woman in medicine who is struggling to pull these elements into your life and you would like the help and support and the community of other women physicians who are struggling with, similar challenges, I want you to join me and let's do this work together. My program is called Unbound, Women Physicians Reclaiming Their Lives. And again, it's going to start December 1st. I'm also really thrilled to announce this great idea that I got from my friend, Dr. Rachel Rubin. She's an amazing fellowship-trained sexual medicine provider. You have to follow her on Instagram. I'll put a link in the show notes if you don't already follow her. She challenged me to offer a buddy package, which is that you can bring a friend and get a better price. So either you can choose to gift a seat basically to your friend, or you sign up together on purpose and you split the cost. You decide. I'll let you work out those details. But you don't have to do this work alone. You get to join the community and you can do it with a friend, right? Built-in accountability buddies. What a beautiful thing. So I'm so grateful to Rachel for suggesting that. I'm definitely on board with that because I think that's an amazing way to do this kind of work, right? We don't do this work alone. We lean in, we work together, we support each other. Just like I had the support of my physician group community over the weekend, I'm inviting you to join a community where we can come together and do this work. My friends, that's what I have for you today. If you are interested in the program, you will find the link in my show notes. You will find it on my website. The group is called Unbound. There's a little button on the top left corner of my website, which is www.healthierforgood.com. You can also email me at megan@healthierforgood.com. Be happy to hear from you, happy to answer any questions that you have. Until next week, my friends, take care. Bye-bye.